Welcome, everyone. Larry Bailey here. We're here for another community meeting. So thanks for coming. Today's topic is going to be all about leveraging the scheduler and automated notifications in Encompass. For those that are just rolling in, you've not missed a thing. Great news is that you came, you're live, you're awesome. We meet every Tuesday at 4 p.m. in the community. For those that are not indoctrinated into the process, we do Teams meetings here and making sure that you've got easy access to all of the information. We've also got Copilot running. If you've never used Copilot in Microsoft, one of the great things it does is it consolidates all the information and makes great notes for us as we go along, which is terrific. So yes, new glasses. It is true, Chris. I do have new glasses. Do you like it? They're a little bit shiny, which I can't do anything about. Thanks for giving me a vote of confidence. So today's conversation is all about how to leverage scheduler, and the mic busted, of course, just before the group event. So I apologize if it sounds a little bit different. Hopefully, you guys can hear me okay. Who is using web settings for scheduler and either internal or external notifications? Is anyone doing that yet? Go ahead and use the chat function. Also in Teams, you've also got the ability to use Q&A if you want. By default, the design, you are not set up to use microphone or camera, just to keep that easy. If for some reason you want to come online and ask a question about this, that's the whole point of doing these, is to make them a community call. All right, so Kelly Luba says we set one up trying to test it now. John says not yet. Jackie says we're trying to start to use it. And Luba said, yeah, the whole DNS thing caught me off guard. Yeah, so we're going to go through that today and how to basically leverage not only scheduler, but then also notifications, because in web, it's a little bit different if you haven't quite figured that out yet. So let me go ahead and share screen. And for those that are listening to this on replay, if you're listening to this on podcast, thanks very much. But head over to mortgage.community. You can check out the replay and all of the notes. All right, so we are going to go through what is scheduler and what are notification templates. First of all, scheduler is something that we've all struggled with in Encompass Desktop, because Encompass doesn't know what today is until you go into the file. And so it becomes this dance of all kinds of crazy concoctions of ideas. Number one, you might build a tool that literally goes through all your files overnight to open, save, close, to run a custom field calc so the file knows what today is. Anybody ever done that? Like, yeah. Maybe not you, but I know a lot of folks have. That's no longer needed, because Workflow Engine is always running. It always knows what today is. It always knows what's going on. So that's the first part of scheduler that is really helpful. The second part of scheduler that's really helpful is it understands how to apply that time. So when we talk about scheduler, I'm going to go through a couple of notification combinations with scheduler that might hit with you. And then also, if you guys are thinking about one or you thought of one that I don't mention, I'd love to have you share that with everyone. So when we look at scheduler itself, of course, I'm always going to tell you to go to encompass.ice.com, by the way, to access Encompass web settings. You can go through desktop, but quite honestly, the ability to have the waffle up here is much better for me. Plus, I always want to make sure you remember that under the customization, of course, you cannot edit your web-based custom forms through desktop. You can only do that through encompass.ice.com. So going back into scheduler templates, obviously we're used to a name here and a description. You're limited currently to 256 characters. If that's not enough, try to make it so. Also, Activator is up here in the upper right. Don't forget to activate your calendar type. This is, of course, helpful based upon the type of thing that you're doing. Do you guys remember that you have a custom Lockdesk calendar? I found recently some admins had forgotten that there's a custom Lockdesk calendar in the secondary tools. This, of course, allows your Lockdesk to be closed for things like Indigenous Peoples Day when your operations is open, right? So you can have your custom. So your company calendar, you should be aware of where to put that. And then, of course, your custom Lockdesk calendar. Reg Z, Business Day Calendar, and US Postal, or just run flat. In other words, there is no special calendar. The ability to count time is just like a regular calendar we all live by. Time zone, you get to pick what time zone this is going to count off of. So you can use UTC if you want. If you're across multiple time zones as a company, you want to use UTC so that it doesn't really matter, or you can pick whatever time zone you want out of that. I'm going to explain what this is in a moment, what 0 to 60 means in here. Interval days, that's your only choice. Now, the direction of what way you're counting for the scheduler is important because this scheduler is going to count the number of days before this event or after this event. And so we have loan data, and loan data is going to pick a field ID. And when you select this field ID, you've got the ability to select standard fields, custom fields, and the all important virtual fields. This is all you can use in virtual fields, documents or milestone. So if you're thinking about another virtual field, you know, like maybe you're thinking of, I don't know, a condition, or you're thinking of, I don't know, something in secondary. Perhaps it's not really a virtual field, but maybe you're thinking about it that way. That's what you're going to have your standard fields for. What you also could theoretically try in a virtual field is to use a custom field. I know plenty of people that still do this. They use custom fields and they put the virtual field inside of it. I would encourage you to not go down that path if you can help it. Obviously, if you pick a document ordered or a document received or a milestone date, either one, when you click apply, you're going to get a list to pick from. So those are the fields that you're picking if you're using loan data. And then based upon the number of days before that loan data date field is chosen, you're going to pick the time of day, and the time of day is going to be relevant to the time zone. Hopefully this is making sense for you. If it's not, tell me to repeat myself, use the chat, or raise your hand and bring you on. Why does the time of day matter? Well, the time of day matters, Luba, because if you want that notification to go out first thing in the morning or at a particular time of day because of how your company works, that's why it matters to you. So this scheduler is, and I said notification just because we're talking about notifications, but the scheduler is built to count time for the purpose of multiple outcomes. So the time of day when the notification goes out, yeah, so what Luke was saying in chat is it allows you to set an expectation of when this scheduler finishes, you want it to finish at a certain time of day. Why is that important? It depends on your workflow. If you want it to finish at 6 a.m., great, do the thing. But if you want to have this thing finished at 8 p.m., because that's when certain work has to get done, so be it also. So definitely explore this time of day. And there's a little indicator here, information bubble. Again, the complete event will be generated, and I'll explain what that means in a moment. Back to this completion duration. If you enter 0 in here, it basically is going to run is at 0. It's going to run immediately when that happens. Now, an event date running at 0 days can, it sounds a little bit weird. I don't know if I can think of a good example of this. But I will give you examples of why you would pick something greater than 0 to, again, either count before that event, before that loan data, or after that loan data. To fire a to start a scheduler to run 0 number of days will only be happening if you have a time of day where you know the scheduler is starting before that time. This is a weird concept, but keep in mind one really important part of schedulers. Scheduler is like it's an object, it's a piece of paper. It doesn't count until you start it. So what does that mean? If I'm going to have an outcome for a scheduler that I want to send out 2 days, okay, before before I want to send out a notification, that's my intention here, to send out a notification 2 days before. Let's go to loan data, 2 days before, and the date field here is 3142, right? So initial disclosure due date, I'm sorry, not 3142, 3152. Sorry about that, gang. So basically 3152, in case you don't know, that's going to give me my initial, that's not what I want. I want my 31, that's the provided date. Let's go ahead and let Angela in. So I want to know when the disclosures are due. So I think it's, what is that, 3143? There we go, 3143. So 2 days before initial disclosures are due, I want to have the scheduler finish. And I'm going to have that finish at, I want that to finish at 8 o'clock a.m. And I'm going to select Eastern time because that's where my fictitious company operates. And I'm going to name this 2 days before, 2 days before initial disclosures due. Okay. So right now, if I click save, and I'm going to go ahead and it's going to automatically not be active, I'm going to activate this. Gang, this is not running. I want you to absorb that. Creating a scheduler and activating the scheduler simply creates the ability to use that scheduler in a workflow rule. Please don't forget this. I know too many admins, again, it's newer, right? But too many admins that are creating schedulers and thinking like that's it. It's running and it's always counting 2 days. No, it's just available to use in a workflow rule so that you can start it. Who wants to guess what's going to be the activator to start it? Anybody have any ideas? Hopefully it's coming to you very quickly, because the idea here is that we know that we want to count, right? If we go back into that scheduler and we go look at the source of the counting, 3143. So you could do an activator of 3142, but because the data source is 3143, you may want to use 3143 in this case, Kirsten. So if I come over into workflow rules and I click a new rule and I say a notification for initial disclosures, 2 days. Okay, use your tags. In there. In your event's going to be a field, sorry about that, field value modified. I'm going to use 3143. Again, you can type it in or you can come into here. So due date, and that's going to be any change. The conditions are going to be, if I go into Query Builder, I can look up 3143. And I can make sure that that is a non-empty date field. That's how that'll write. My result is I want to start a scheduler. The scheduler I'm starting is 2 days before initial disclosures. Had I not activated that scheduler, this would not show up. Save. So we created it, now active. Now it's running. Now every file from this moment on that has 3143 update to a non-empty date field, that scheduler is going to run. The scheduler is going to run and it's going to say, hey, 2 days after the scheduler at 8 a.m., the scheduler is going to finish. Everybody on the same page? Everybody's good? Hopefully so. If you're not, let me know in chat. Now, what happens when the scheduler finishes? 2 days before, I want to send out a notification. So here's some notifications that I found could be helpful. First one, initial disclosures are still due. Another one is ITP, intent to proceed, is not returned. Another one is status of loan file to loan officer every X number of days. If you've got folks that are giving your loan officers email statuses of what's going on in the file, guess what? And they build a report or they do a weekly report. You can do this every X number of days on a particular file, and you can let that run and send out an automated internal email that says, hey, this is what's going on in this file. Of course, that's dependent upon how you're documenting the file, those kinds of things, but it's an option. You can use that same kind of methodology to send notifications to external companies as well. So if you're dealing with TPOs, you can send out TPO company users. And then you can also come in here in regular, and if you have an email address that you want to send that out to internally, you can. Now, one of the things that you cannot do is commingle internal email user with external, or internal company user with external. We choose this, we have these internal roles, and otherwise you have external roles, so you cannot commingle them. So it would be an external facing only. You can also use these kind of categories where you can categorize the templates for however you want. If you wanted to change what these categories were, you would just come back in the notification templates, and you can change the categories here. You can add as many categories as you find important. The thing that Luba was talking about earlier is the sender configuration. Now, if you don't, Kimberly, I'll come back to your question in 1 second. If you don't change this in here and get it verified, it will come out, the emails, the notifications that are sent out from ICE. It's no reply -mortgagetech@ice.com. So it's probably better to come out from your domain. So you would enter your email address, send verification. The verification instructions that are on there will give your team the ability to configure the DNS. This is one of the best ways to send email confirmations because the email passes through your DNS settings, not through SMTP and not through Outlook. Let me take a couple questions here. So Kimberly asks, to send an automated email, you need to create a scheduler, to create a workflow rule, to start a scheduler, and then create the notification. No, Kimberly. To send an automated email, you can simply come into workflow rules and fire off one of the notification templates that you've enabled. So if there's no reason to wait for time, just use a workflow rule to send out a as a result, to just send out a notification, right? So when you can come in here, you can send notification and get it out, right? Select your template and send it. But if you want that notification to only go out after a certain number of days have passed since an event, or number of days before an event, that's why you would use a scheduler. Hopefully that makes sense. Libby says, is there an audit trail to see what fired or not? Well, 1000%, which is another reason why I like coming through here, because you can go into automation audit, you can search by attempted action, and you can look for everything that's happened in here. So including your scheduler being started or your notifications being sent. So Luba, that's for you. Yeah, so John just was trying to help, but yeah, it's called Automation Audit, and it's in the waffle, which you can only get to through encompass.ice.com. Cool. So if we go back into the waffle, yeah. If we go back into your notification templates, we've gone through that. Make sure you enable them. Um, So if we're going through some other ideas, X number of days before the closing package for the borrower prep call. So I've seen some workflows where there's like a get ready for closing workflow, and sometimes the estimated closing dates change, and so you always want to make sure that call happens X number of days before closing. Another one is for post closing is a missing closing package. If it's been X number of days after the closing and you don't have the closing package back, what's going on? That's a scheduler. And the results for these can be notifications like we talked about, but you can also use the scheduler to end up in other results, such as creating tasks, right? So it's not just about using the scheduler for notifications. That was the topic of our conversation today. But you can also use the scheduler to write workflow rules to end up firing tasks as well. Kirsten asks, can you utilize the scheduler to order a service? Yes. Example for running fraud at 6 a.m. on the day of funding. Yes, you can. Kirsten, I hadn't thought about that, but yes. So what you would do is you would write for 6 a.m. the day of funding, you would basically come into scheduler. We would come in here and we would do whatever the day of funding is. I don't even know what field ID is. But you come in and you do loan data and you do field ID and you would do 0600 AM and you would do 0 days. That would be a good example of a 0-day scheduler. You just want it to run at 6 a.m. That's a scheduler. The workflow rule would be a new rule, and you would say the triggering event would be the scheduler completed, and it would be that scheduler that we just did, pretend it's this one. And the result would be to order a service, and the service that you would order would be your fraud. That's how you would set that up, Kirsten. So yeah, great example. Great example. Kathleen asks, notifications can go to file contacts. Yes. So your notifications going back up in here, assuming that they're internal, you can select as many roles as you want. Well, that's dumb, but funder. How's that one? Loan officer, closer, lock desk, funder. The notification is, hey, we're closing this loan today. Make sure everything's cool. Another one for another example is loan not being purchased in time. That's a notification that can go out. And then the last one, if you've got CRMs firing these kinds of reminders, so be it, but not everybody has a CRM. But you can also do anniversary calls or / email reminders to go out, to remind the salespeople, to remind them to go back to people who were adverse and say, hey, follow up with this deal. Maybe their situation changed for the better, or closed files or birthdays or all kinds of reminders to basically provide a call to action for your sales or production team to remember what to do. Angela says, can the scheduler work to create a report of all loans that are 2 business days from the LE due date? So it's not a report. So Angela, it's really important to understand this is each loan is being reviewed for when the scheduler is going to finish. So you wouldn't want to do a report because who's included in the report? Now, let's say you've got 50 loans in your pipeline. All 50 aren't doing 2 days. Now, as a manager, if you want to manage that, you're going to use a pipeline view. Okay. But if your workflow is, hey, I need to remember to do something 2 business days before the LE's due date, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do 2 days and I'm going to do before, and I'm going to select LE due, which actually, that's exactly the same thing I just went through. So use this one. So that's the LE due. That's the one I did, 3143. I just didn't do 2. Actually, I did do 2 days. But business days, you want a business days. So you can do in here. So your company calendar, you would do your company calendar. Angela. So it's right here. That's the one actually I did. So I promise everybody I didn't pay Angela to ask me that question. That was just coincidence. So so hopefully you're getting the idea of scheduler. Scheduler is extraordinarily powerful because as we're going through, it's the idea of being able to start it and then make sure when it finishes, do something, whether it's notifications like I've been talking about, or tasks like I briefly mentioned, or ordering services. Basically, any of the results that you see in the workflow rule over here, any of these results you can do. There's some that are going to be a little bit less obvious than others, but you can. All right. I want to talk about this, cancel scheduler. So using Angela's situation, the one I explained earlier, we want the initial disclosures to go out, but what if the loan becomes adverse and it's still running? We don't want it to still run. We don't want it to send out that reminder because maybe it's not just one notification going out. Maybe you're sending one out on the second day, one on the, 2 days left, 1 day left, 0 days left. Well, we don't want that scheduler for 1 day, 0 days left if the deal was canceled. So what you can do is you can go in and write your triggering event that says if a field value is modified, and you want to use 1393, right? So we say this, and then we come in any change, and we say, if we go into Query Builder, and I use field 1393, and we use this, and I click Apply, and then I select as any of, and I do, well, I should say is not any of, not active, right, or originated. So if I write that, now I know the result is I want this to cancel the scheduler. And the schedule I want it to cancel is the 2 days before initial disclosure due. So it's important to start thinking about as an admin, when do we want something to start? What do we want to do when it finishes? But what do we do when we don't want it to finish? Not every one of these schedulers or business or workflow rules that you have are going to need an off switch. But if you've got a situation, if you've got a workflow where there needs to be a kill switch in the middle so that it doesn't produce the outcome that's no longer true. Remember, if we write a rule that says when the scheduler is finished, do this thing. But if the loan is never going to need that thing because it changed paths, make sure you create a workflow rule to cancel that scheduler. So when I usually say that, a lot of times in people's brains, you start thinking about, well, this just made everything more complicated. Like now I not only have to think about what a successful outcome looks like, but how do I make sure that the rule doesn't run? Guys, you're already doing this. It's called DDM rules. You're already doing this concept. So remember, like DDM rule runs all the time, right? Except when you don't want it to run. So it's the same thing here with scheduler. You want scheduler to run all the time, except when you don't want it to run. So your brains are already wired to deal with this. It's a very fantastic way to make sure that from a workflow perspective, you're always on top of what's going on. And this is why I always come into workflow comes way before technology. Like workflow before technology is a real thing. I've been saying it forever, and I want you to really understand this is why I say that, because if you don't know how your company actually is working, you can't figure out what kind of schedulers you might need. You certainly can't figure out what notifications or tasks that might help them. And to use Kirsten's example earlier, she's got a workflow where they're running fraud day of. I think that's awesome. And historically speaking, you'd have to figure out how to write a rule to make sure they do it or overly train, blah, blah, blah. Now, if you've got them in EPC and they accept automation rules, you can create your automation rules through your services. So it's there, and then you can run the automation through workflow rules, leveraging your scheduler 0 days before day of funding at 6 a.m. No coding necessary. You don't need to know JavaScript. You don't need to know APIs. You can just do your settings right here. So super exciting stuff. This is I love doing this. This is going to be the biggest thing. We're going to be at the ICE show in a booth inside. We're going to be doing a wrap-up show. If you're interested in finding out more about the wrap-up show and you're going to stay 1 day, I'm trying to come up with a format for that, so please enjoy. And follow us on YouTube if you want, using Mastering at Compass. And if I can ever help you get through any of this stuff, I'm always available for consulting or just general questions through the community. You guys know that. So, John, I'm going to do it on Thursday again for the wrap up. Yes. And there's going to be a special announcement for the actual during the ice show. I'm going to be doing something special during the ice show. Details are going to be announced by ice first. So that's all I can say right now. It's going to be cool. Promise. All right, gang, you guys are awesome. Thanks for coming today. Hopefully this has been helpful and show off on the community what you guys are doing with the scheduling. I'd love to share ideas. Like that one from Kirsten is like solid. It's a great idea. You guys run with it. Like literally run away. You guys have a great day. Thanks for coming. We'll see you now. Bye-bye.